Hi everyone, I'm Simon from Stampix and welcome to Loyalty Expert Talks, where we share insights and best practices on loyalty and customer experience. Today I had the pleasure of interviewing Mark Evans from Direct Line Group, the UK's #1 insurance company, where Mark holds the position of Managing Director of Digital Marketing Activities. Now, Mark is a very experienced marketeer, held several roles at marketing agencies, fast mover consumer goods, banking, HSBC, etc. So really an expert in the field with over 20 years of experience. So it was a really interesting interview, but unfortunately, I made the rookie mistake of not pressing the record button at the beginning of the interview. I could try to make up for an excuse, but in the end, we were just talking about the soccer final, England versus Italy, and so it slipped my mind. I only realized it halfway in the interview when we were discussing the loyalty letter. So what I'll do is I'll quickly share my screen to highlight the loyalty letter again, bring us back into the spirits of the conversation we had back then, and then we'll jump on to the real interview. And so the loyalty letter is actually a model we devised here at Stampix, where we took two of the most common metrics in loyalty, one being NPS, Net Promoter Score. On the horizontal axis, we have engagement. At the lower left bottom, we have inertial loyalty. Think about government, banking, and also insurance, which is why this was interesting to discuss with Mark, how Direct Line Group fit in there. Moving up on the ladder, we have what we call mercenary loyalty, where customers are basically paid for their loyalty through discounts, coupons, cashbacks, whatever the case may be. As we move up on the ladder, we enter the more emotional areas, where one of them is true loyalty. And then sort of the holy grail, of course, is cult loyalty, where customers feel like the brand is part of their identity. I shared the model with Mark. He highlighted the situation for Direct Line Group. I think it was very remarkable to see that they really focus on their own customer journey, getting that right, and being present at the moment of truth, which is when you have an incident, when there is a car accident or something goes wrong. They really want to make that, optimize that experience, which I think is very clever, not to get distracted with many of the other elements in loyalty before getting your own stuff together. So that was interesting, and that's sort of the moment where, I pressed the record button. So I'll let Mark explain it again from here on. So here we go.
Well, honestly, I could take that question and this model in so many different directions, because this model talks to a lot of the different things. The first thing perhaps I would say is we have very high levels of NPS by doing the basics really well, even if it's not necessarily the most engaging and loved sector. So I could say I challenge the model. I'm not going to do that because that would be unhelpful. So what can I say? Cult loyalty, I think that's a stretch for insurance, bearing in mind what I've said about it being a bit more of a tax. I don't want to use it. It's an infrequent interaction. That said, some of the fintech and insurtech companies, if we think of the likes of the Lemonade, in some regards, they are becoming almost a sort of a status symbol or something that's cool, and some of the new banking apps and models. So, but I think in the main, let's be real, insurance, it's more in the inertial loyalty space, relatively transactional process, and many people kind of staying with the devil they know rather than the devil they don't. So when people come to their renewal cycle, they maybe have a look around, but many people shop but then just stay because they it's sort of familiar, and I worry that I might get ripped off by somebody else. But that said, I think we've done a number of things that sort of elevate us above that. So differentiated added value propositions mean that we do, I think we have above average levels of loyalty. And actually the customer experience pillars that we have, 6 pillars, quite straightforward, which guide the blueprint for every customer journey and every proposition, mean that I think we show up well for our customers, which is why we're reflected in high NPS and high loyalty scores. So maybe we sort of buck the trend a little bit and we're more top left. So I think what really stands us in good stead against our competitors is that we are really focused on these 6 customer experience pillars. The good thing about these, in terms of the business's acceptance of them, is that it's been commercially proven that they drive NPS. And they're quite basic things. meet the customer's expectation, treat me like an individual, show me empathy. But it provides a very simple sat nav for what's most important when we're defining customer journeys and propositions. And that has consistently led to very, very strong gains on NPS across all our brands, in fact, but particularly Direct Line. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that consistency and deliberate focus on what actually drives NPS has helped us to move ahead of the pack. That said, I can imagine that as we move to a more fractional, modularized world, insurance more pay-as-you-go, which is coming, that changes the rules of the game again. And that, again, that's a slight bridge maybe towards the more cult end, where the nature of insurance is changing, particularly with the younger demographic. And so we're very focused on how do we meet the next generation of insurance needs. And in that sense, a bit more technology and new tools and techniques are going to be really important.
Great, thanks, Mark. So referring back to the model, we've got emotional loyalty being the holy grail for many brands. Are there any specific actions that come to mind that you executed with the team at Direct Line to drive emotional loyalty? For example, surprise and delight rewards around certain moments?
So we have done empathy training in our contact centers, just so that every time we show up in a human touch environment, our staff know how to be. And there's some simple diagnostic tools that they have just to understand sort of what's the motivations of the person they're talking to. Are they more action oriented, more data driven, more empathy driven, and so on. So I think that undercurrent means that we show up quite well. We've also picked a couple of really hotspot customer experience moments, not least when a customer has died and their partner's picking up the pieces. We created a bereavement team. We completely changed the parameters and the process around that process to make it as simple as possible. And so in a way, it's not surprise and delight. It's more just really show up well at the moments that it really matters for our customers. And so it's not flashy. It's not, pizzazz and TV advertised type stuff. But I think that's the thing. Insurance is there to fix people's lives when they're broken.
Yeah.
And so, showing up with respect and empathy when it really counts is probably the thing that one of the things we're most proud of.
So, Mark, acknowledging its Direct Line's mission to make insurance more personal, inclusive, and a force for good, can you share with us a specific initiative or a loyalty campaign that jumps to mind? And how did you measure the impact for the brand?
Yeah, well, having been in the role for about 10 years, we've done a lot of stuff. But the one that leaps out actually is a brand that we created called Shotgun. So Shotgun is the term you use for being in the passenger seat. So when kids start to drive, they call Shotgun to be next to the driver. Why did we launch that? Well, unfortunately, in our data, we see repeatedly the number of 17, 18-year-olds, particularly males, killed and very badly injured through accidents on the road. It's probably surprising to know that 2 years ago, our biggest single claim with one car, just one car, was £19.6 million. You think, how can that possibly be? Well, the sad reality is that whilst the driver was kind of relatively okay, his three best friends were in wheelchairs for the rest of their lives. So we see the worst of young driving, essentially. Mm-hmm. So we wanted to create an app and a brand that could reverse the conventional thinking of fast driving is cool and make slow driving is cool. So we built a whole app and an incentive mechanism and essentially created leaderboards where people had a score up to 100 for how safe they drove. Braking, cornering, acceleration, time of day, type of roads, etc. And what we found was that young teenagers were trying to get to the top of the leaderboard by driving really safely. And for that first 1,000 miles, when after the test, people think they get better, but they get a lot worse because there's nobody to guide them, or they suddenly get a bit arrogant with it. So they're going through that first 1,000 miles really super conscious. And as I said, doing a flip on conventional logic. The other thing is that we provide an incentive structure. So for their first good journey, they get a Starbucks voucher and it goes up and up in a ratchet. So essentially we used a lot of behavioral economics, as I said, to turn the tide on conventional behavior. And how do we measure it? We measure it in terms of the improvement in safety of driving. It's very measurable. It's all app-based. And we could extrapolate that out into how many lives we could save. And I'm super proud of that activity. We're now looking at how do we incorporate that back into our core brands, because unfortunately there's still far too many deaths on the road in that cohort. So yeah, shotgun, super proud.
So looking at it from a more practical perspective, you've got the digital challenges, you've got all the people who are first line contact, the human touch, the different brands that you have, pet insurances, car insurances. How does an insurance company nowadays manages those data streams? Do you work with partners? Are you more building it from the inside out, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's a great question. Like most legacy insurers, we've got legacy systems, stands to reason. So we are building our data layer internally. We're not there yet. So I won't pretend that we've got a beautifully orchestrated CRM system where every data point from every customer flows through to every touch point. It's just not real yet, but we're on the path, and we are looking to build that internally. We do have a very strong marketing single customer view, but it doesn't necessarily link to all the touch points, as I said. But for us, we've invested heavily in building a data community, bringing in data scientists. We think that it's, in the end, insurance is actually not much more than data. And therefore, it's very important for us to build the right data environment. It just takes time and effort and commitment to get there, particularly around legacy systems. The benefit of the greenfield sites is that they can build their single customer view on one system at source. Yeah, we don't have that luxury, but that's okay because our scale will stand us in good stead. But it's a very common problem to get all the data to talk to the different component parts within insurance.
All right, thanks. And maybe to round off, Mark, is there a particular brand or product in your personal life that you are loyal to and that comes to mind when you think of brand loyalty?
Yeah, well, I mean, the obvious answer would be Amazon, because I can't imagine life without them. But I think that's inertia loyalty. So I'm actually going to talk to a brand. It's called Wagamama's, which may be a UK specific brand. It's a restaurant chain that sort of breaks the rules. So it's very, very good, fresh Asian food, but you don't have sort of pre-arranged seatings or pre-booking. You just walk in, and the meals come at all different times because it's the freshest thing that they've cooked. So it's a very sort of agile environment from their point of view. And the reason I like it is it's a good experience. It's great food. It's very affordable, and my kids love it. And so it's the moment when a 15 and a 19-year-old children will still join their old parents for a family meal. And so, yeah, it's our go-to. We go from Wagamama's to the cinema. It's a very predictable pattern in non-lockdown times. So that would be the one where it's more sort of an emotional bond than a rational bond.
Makes a lot of sense. Good family times. Great. Thanks, Mark. That already brings us to the end of the interview. So thanks a lot for all the info.
Thank you for having me on board. It's been a pleasure, and see everyone soon.
Thanks, Mark.